I'm author and educator Rebecca Kemp Brent. Badges and patches are a lot of fun, and they're a great way to identify yourself, you know, like an auto mechanic patch with a name on it, or maybe make a persona for yourself by making superhero insignia. I'd like to show you a quick and easy way, a couple of ways, to make those badges and patches. And I'm going to start by showing you how to do a badge on an embroidery machine. But if you don't have an embroidery machine yet, I'm also going to tell you how you can do exactly or almost exactly the same thing with a sewing machine. So we'll go to the screen of the embroidery machine, and I'm going to start by bringing in the design that I'd like to use. We've got lots of built-in designs, but I'm actually going to import a different one. I like my little lizard. So maybe we're creating a character named Lizard Man. Now I'm going to add a frame pattern, and these are sort of like the magic ingredient for making patches. You can choose any of the shapes, and the first time I want to sew that out as just an ordinary straight stitch. We'll set the design, and you can see that that doesn't quite fit around my lizard, so I'm going to change the size of the design, and then I can use these keys to refine it just a little bit. Okay, and that's a nice fit for him. And then we'll go back and add one more part of our badge. I want the same shape, but this time I'm going to stitch it with a satin stitch outline. We set that, and of course we have to resize it too. You want this design to be just a tiny bit bigger than the one that was made with straight stitches, and that's because it's going to lie on top and sort of cover the raw edges of our badge. So we've got to be sure that it's just a tiny bit bigger so it covers everything properly. There we go. And you can zoom in to take a better look at things and just see that you've got everything lined up the way you want it. Then we're ready to stitch. You can think about making badges as a kind of applique, but instead of a fabric background, I'm using 2 layers of a water-soluble mesh stabilizer. The mesh gives a little bit more integrity to the backing, so it's less likely to tear when you're doing the satin edging, and 2 layers just gives it a little bit of extra body so everything stays in place. Then I need the fabric that I use for my badge, and I have put a layer of sort of craft type, slightly stiff interfacing on the back of this because this is going to give body to the patch when I'm finished. We'll put this over the hoop. If your machine has a function for basting the fabric in place, you can use that, but you don't really have to because we're going to stitch out, first of all, this straight stitch outline. And this one won't take very long to stitch at all. Okay, so once we have that all set up, now our fabric is basted securely to the stabilizer, and we're ready to go ahead and stitch the main part of our design. Right now you can be using bobbin thread in your bobbin and your decorative threads in the needle, but when you do the last part of the stitching, you'll need to be sure that you have the same thread in both your needle and your bobbin. When you finish with the stitching in the center of your badge, then you need to slip the hoop off the machine and put it down on a flat surface to help make sure that you don't distort things while you're taking care of this next bit of business. And then you're going to trim the applique fabric as close as you can to the stitching line. I'm using curved scissors to help me get closer. If you have a pair of scissors with a blunt tip, those also work really well because they'll help to keep from catching on the stabilizer as you trim. If you are doing this technique on a sewing machine, then you'll do the same steps here in the process, but you'll be drawing your design on the fabric first And of course you'll be guiding those stitches by hand. So once I have everything trimmed, I'm ready to take this back to the embroidery machine, put the hoop back on, and now we're going to stitch that final layer, which is the satin stitch edging. And the edging, the satin stitch, is going to cover the outside edge of our fabric so we don't have a raw edge. Okay, I'm going to stop the machine. I have a sample that it's already finished with the stitching, so I can show you that. When you take it out of the hoop, this is what you'll have. And the magic with this water-soluble stabilizer is that it goes away completely. So when I have a small job like this, what I like to do is just moisten a cotton swab and sort of paint along the edge. And the stabilizer will just pull away as it dissolves. Then you can go back with your cotton swab and clean up any pokies you have, and what you're left with is a great finished edge on your badge. Now, I have a couple of other ideas to show you. If you're making these on a sewing machine, then of course one of the questions is, how do you get your design into the middle of the badge? There are a lot of great ways to do that. One of my favorites is to use inkjet printer fabric, which you can use to print any design you want to on your fabric. Or especially if you're using a licensed design, you may be able to find a fabric print that has just the logo you're looking for. You can also use fabric markers and paints, or you can even use artist pencils. Artist colored pencils and watercolored pencils are great for coloring on fabric. They're not color fast, but here's a trick. If you paint a layer of textile medium over the top when you're finished, they become permanent colors on your fabric. One other technique that I really like for making badges and patches is this one, where I've made sort of a faux athletic letter. I kind of always wanted to letter in sewing, so I can make my own letter, and I've done this by using felt instead of water-soluble stabilizer as my backing fabric. And then instead of melt away the stabilizer, I've trimmed it about 1/8 of an inch outside the edge to leave just that pop of the background color. I've also used a similar technique to make these little tiles, and those I have trimmed with a pinking shear around the edge just for a little extra style to it. You may be able to find through online suppliers pre-made blanks, and all you have to do is put your design or your lettering on it. And sometimes you'll have an embroidery design that's filled so completely with stitches you don't even need the satin edging. You can just trim right around. That leaves us with just one more question. How do you put these badges on your clothing or whatever other garment, or a tote bag, whatever you want to put them on? Of course, you can sew these on by hand or by machine, but I also like to use fusible products. Ultra firm fusible web is great, and there actually are a couple of fusible products available now, especially made for attaching badges, so these are very permanent. You iron them on and they'll stay forever. One last idea, if you want to make your badges and patches removable, is a special glue that's designed to peel off again. So you wear it. When you're finished, you peel this off, and you can keep this by storing it on a piece of waxed paper and use it over and over again. So I hope I've given you some ideas for making badges and patches. Whether you use them to reveal your identity or create a whole new one, I hope you'll have a little fun exploring this idea.